Welcome to week 7. We're going to read Hebrews in 3 sessions of 20 minutes or less. As we get started, here's a couple of items to think about. Number 1, this isn't a letter. It's really a sermon. All the letters in the New Testament start by identifying the author and its recipients, and include words of greeting, grace and peace, for example. That's not true of Hebrews. Number 2, we don't know who the author is. We can safely say he's a man because he uses masculine pronouns to refer to himself. This is the only book in the New Testament whose authorship is unknown. Now, the original recipients of this letter definitely knew his identity. The people who first heard and read this sermon were Jewish Christians who likely lived near Jerusalem. And it's apparent from the sermon that they are suffering persecution because of their faithfulness to Jesus. Through the centuries, lots of different names have been suggested as its author. Paul, Apollos, Barnabas. No one knows for sure. The 3rd century church historian Origen believed it was Paul, but he famously acknowledged this: who wrote the epistle? In truth, only God knows. I may not know who wrote it, but I'm very glad that we have it. It is marvelous. The first 4 verses of Hebrews are one long, beautiful sentence. Now, our English translations helpfully break this one long sentence into 2 or even 3 sentences for us. That helps break it down and make it more manageable. But I want you to notice something. This opening sentence contains 7 descriptions of Jesus. Long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom also he created the world, who is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, and upholding the universe by the word of his power, having made purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high, having become as much superior to angels as the name he has inherited is more excellent than theirs. Here's one more detail I need to share with you before we leave verses 1 through 4. At the heart of this complex sentence is this little phrase: God has spoken. When you boil it all down, that's what this sentence is saying. God has spoken to us through Jesus. When you come to the end of the sermon in chapter 12, this is what we find. Be careful that you do not refuse to listen to the one who is speaking. We will certainly not escape if we reject the one who speaks to us from heaven. What's going on here? The body of the sermon begins and ends with this concept. God has spoken through Jesus. You'd better listen. This sermon is all about Jesus' priesthood. Now, in the very first verse, Jesus was compared to the Old Testament prophets. God spoke to us by the prophets, but now he has spoken to us by his Son. So Jesus is our prophet. He's also our high priest. And oh, by the way, this sermon also tells us that Jesus is our king. Because these concepts are so important in Hebrews, I want to make sure we all understand the fundamental difference between a prophet and a priest. This is an oversimplification, but I hope it will help. The prophet represents God to the people, and the priest represents the people to God. Prophets preached messages that they received from God, and the priest interceded for the people, offering sacrifices on their behalf so that they could maintain their relationship with God or find forgiveness. Jesus is both. He is the greatest prophet, and he is our high priest. Hebrews chapters 1 and 2 go together. In Hebrews 1, verse 5 through verse 13, there are 7 quotations from the Old Testament. These 7 passages have been carefully chosen to show how Jesus is superior to the angels, and everyone else for that matter. Hebrews chapters 1 and 2 close out by describing Jesus as our high priest. The introduction of this term in chapter 2, verse 17, high priest, is the first of many references to Jesus as our high priest. In this sermon, he says that Jesus is a merciful high priest who suffered, was tempted, and therefore can help us when we suffer and are tempted. Several times in Hebrews, we find warning passages, as they're called. There's 5 of them, And the first one is in Hebrews chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. Here's how it starts. Therefore, we must pay closer attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away from it. Can you hear the continued emphasis on hearing? Just as chapters 1 and 2 go together, chapters 3 and 4 go together. And they're all about how Jesus is greater than Moses. Just as Moses, the servant of God, built the tabernacle, Jesus, the Son of God, built a tabernacle too. But his is greater than Moses' tabernacle because it's the church. The ancient tabernacle in the days of Moses was often referred to as the tent of meeting. That's because God would meet there with the high priest. Well, Jesus serves as the high priest of his tabernacle, the church. As our high priest, he mediates between us and God, representing us to God and giving us full access to the creator of the universe. Here's something else you'll see as you read chapters 3 and 4 together. They talk extensively about Psalm 95. In fact, Hebrews chapter 3, verses 7 through 11, quote Psalm 95, verses 7 through 11. And then, starting in verse 12 of Hebrews 3, there's the second of the 5 warning passages in Hebrews. Take care, brothers and sisters, lest there be in any of you an evil, unbelieving heart, leading you to fall away from the living God. Psalm 95 was a historical psalm that recounted the faithlessness of the first generation of Israelites who came out of Egyptian bondage and rebelled against God. The very people who built the tabernacle, as a matter of fact. By quoting this psalm, Hebrews chapters 3 and 4 take us down memory lane. We're reminded about how, as punishment, that first generation under the leadership of Moses was not allowed to enter God's rest, that is, the promised land. Instead, they wandered for 40 years in the wilderness and died. The word rest is used 10 times across chapters 3 and 4. Ancient Israel did not enter God's rest, but we have, under the leadership of our Savior, Jesus. It won't take you very long to read these opening 4 chapters of Hebrews, so take it slow and read carefully Hebrews chapters 1 through 4, verse 13. We'll pick up right there and talk about our high priest Jesus, starting in verse 14, next.